net content or weight checking. This we have this is official in USP NF. Okay. Now, how do we carry out the net content? Now, net content is carried out, if you can see the mind mapping over here that I have done, the figure that I have shown over here below. Okay, you take the container, you mark the container as I've shown you over here. So you mark the container with red, right? So you take the container, mark the container, and this marked container, you take the weight. So what you get is you get the tailed empty container. This tailed empty container weight which you have, you put it into the filling line. Okay, the filling line is going on, the conveyor belt is going on which you have different containers that have been placed, right? You have seen the video. In one of this, you place your marked container inside it. After placing the marked container, what is going to happen is the container is going to get filled by your product concentrate first, isn't it? It is going to get filled with your product concentrate. So the filling of the container is carried out. Then again, what you are going to do is you are going to remove this container and you are going to weigh that container. Okay, so you keep the container over here, you weigh it, and then you find the difference between the two containers. Okay, the container with tailed weight and the container with filled volume, right? So that difference is going to give you the quantity of product concentrate that is getting filled inside the container. Are you getting me? This is how you find out the net content of your product that is going inside the container. Now these tests should be carried out very periodically, right? After say every 15 minutes, after say every half an hour, after say every 45 minutes, you are going to take a container, you are going to check its weight, you are going to mark it, you are going to fill it, you are going to again weigh it, and you are going to find out the difference, and you are going to see whether the net content that was intended by you is getting filled inside the container or not. What is the advantage of it? Okay. Now uniformity, if you find there is uniformity of weight every time that is getting filled inside the container, the weight is uniform, that it ensures, then what does it ensure? It ensures the accuracy of the filling procedure. That whatever the method by which you are carrying out the filling, okay, the equipments that are used for filling, that are what? That are working properly, that are working accurately. So it ensures the accuracy of this filling procedure. So this test you are going to do periodically. The technique that you're using for the product concentrate or the concentrate, the same technique now you are going to use for the propellant also. So what you are going to do is this, maybe you can take the same container which has been tailed, right? Now you have the weight, you have this weight, the second weight also. Again, what you are going to do is you are going to fill the propellant inside it. You have filled the first you have to fill the product concentrate. Now you are going to fill the product inside it, and after filling the product, you are again going to weigh. So again, you are going to find out the quantity of propellant that is filled inside it. So you are going to check whether the quantity of concentrate that is filled inside it is right or wrong. Then again, you are going to check whether the quantity of propellant that is getting filled inside the container is correct, is uniform every time. And finally, you can carry out this method for the finished product filled container also. So the container which is filled with first your product concentrate, then with your propellant, this total weight you are going to find out that the total quantity that is present inside this container is correct or not. So this is the method by which you find out the net weight. This is the one of the method. The other method is another destructive method. Okay, whereby in this what you can do is once you see that everything is fine, okay, the uniformity weight is there, then what you can do is you can go for packing of this container, so nothing is getting wasted. The another method is the destructive method. In destructive method, what you do is you take the container, okay, the final container, which has been filled, which has been what you call that, the wall etc has been totally attached to it, okay. Then you weigh this container, you find out the weight of the container. After finding out the weight of the container, you break this container, okay, you destruct this container, you open this container. You remove the whatever are the contents that are present inside it, that is the concentrate as well as the propellant that is present inside it. You remove it, and then you again weigh the container. So what you have the total filled weight of the container, and you have empty weight of the container. If you subtract the filled weight from the empty weight, what you are going to get? The quantity of ingredient that is present inside the container, that will be able to find out. Okay, so this is how you find out the net content, or this is how you do the weight checking of the quantity of propellant that is present inside, propellant as well as the concentrate, product concentrate, that is present inside the container. Okay, understood? Moving ahead, the next kind of test that you carry out is foam stability. Now, foam stability, why do you carry out this test? Because the life of the foam is varying. In some cases, you want the foam to remain for few seconds, right? In case of quick breaking foam, you want the foam to remain for few seconds and then it should collapse. Whereas in some cases, like in case of shaving cream, maybe in case of your face washes, etc., in that cases, you want your foam to remain for more time, isn't it? Maybe for hours also, right? In such cases, you have to check the foam, the formulation that you have prepared is giving the same kind of foam stability that you intend at the latter stage when the patient or when the customer is going to use it. Okay, so in that case, you are going to check the foam stability. Different methods are used for checking the foam stability. One is visual inspection. You take out the contents from the container. After taking, that is the foam from the container, and then you visually inspect whether the foam is remaining stable or the foam is quickly collapsing. The second method, it will be the time required for a mass. So this is the mass, right? The time required for this mass to penetrate inside the foam. If the foam is very thick, okay, in that case, the time required for this mass to penetrate to the foam and go down is going to be what? Is going to be higher. More time will be required. For the thicker kind of an foam, for thick foam, you require more time. Okay. Whereas if you take a thin foam, okay, or a non-stable foam, then the time required for the mass to penetrate would be what? Would be very less. Okay, so this is how you do the second method. The second method is why the time required for the mass to penetrate the foam. The third method is the time required for the rod which has been inserted inside it. Okay, a stick or a rod which you insert inside the foam. You insert a stick or the rod inside the foam, and then you find out the time that is required for it to fall. If the foam is thick enough, then the time required for the stick to fall is going to be greater. Okay, more time is required for the stick to be fall. It is going to remain straight for a longer period of time. Whereas if the foam is thinner, if it is non-stable, then this rod is going to fall very quickly. That is the third method, that is by inserting the rod and finding out the time required for it to fall. The next method is by use of rotational viscometers. So use viscometers in order to determine the thickness of the foam and the stability of the foam. So that is the third method, that is use of viscometers, right? There are other methods also which you must have studied earlier, that is Ross-Miles test, in which what you do is you see the time for which, so what you do is you take the cylinder, in that you take the the solution, and then you produce the foam, and the time that is required for the foam to collapse is been noted. It is similar to your visual method, which is used for your other samples where the foam is required, right? You required for the testing of the foam. Okay, ahead now from foam stability to particle size distribution. Are you able to hear me? Am I audible?
Audible.
I'm clear, na? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Now moving ahead with the next evaluation test that you carry out for the aerosol is particle size determination. In particle size determination, why this test is important, first let us see. If the particles are too large, okay, then these particles would reach. What you want is the drug particle should reach your lungs. Okay, that is what you're intending when you're using a meter dose inhalers. Okay, MDIs. When you're using MDIs, you want that you want that ingredients to reach up to your lungs. Now it is dependent upon what? It is dependent upon the particle size. If the particle size is small, then due to velocity, it is going to travel a lot, and then there is a possibility that it may reach the lungs. Definitely, you can't give the guarantee, but definitely there are chances that reaching of the lung. Okay, the chances of the particles reaching to the lungs is going to be increased. But at the same time, if you see, if the particle size are bigger, okay, are larger, then these particles are not going to travel a lot. Due to the weight that it is having and due to the gravitational force, etc., these particles are going to travel for a few distance, and they are going to drop down. What happens in case of COVID is that only these this COVID, the virus which is causing you COVID, these viruses are very small in size, and as these viruses are very small in size, these what they do is they migrate a lot. So somebody talks over here, right, and it migrates up to near about 6 feet, etc. So that much is the migration. That's why they ask you to keep the social distancing, because it is traveling. Okay, because the size of that virus is very, very small. In the similar manner, if the particle size is very small, then it is going to travel a lot. But imagine if the particle size is too small. If the particle size is very small, then instead of reaching to the lung, it is going to be exhaled out. Okay, so you don't want the particle size to be too large. At the same time, you don't want the particle size to be too small. Hence, it is very important for you to determine what is the particle size, okay, of the material that is present inside the aerosol. The method that has been utilized is known as cascade impactor. Okay, the other method that has been utilized is known as light scattering decay. Now, in cascade impactor, what happens is, in cascade impactor, the stream of particles, okay, there are stream of particles. You can see the particles that are over here. These particles of different size. You can see some are of bigger size, some are of very smaller size. These particles are projected through a series of nozzles. Can you see? This is the nozzle. Okay, over here, this is the nozzle. This is the gap. Over here, this is the gap. So there are series of nozzles. Over here, this is the gap. Okay. So you can see the nozzle size goes on decreasing. Here the nozzle size is too big. The nozzle size is decreasing over here, and it goes on decreasing as you go further. If you see over here, the nozzle size is very small. If you see over here, the nozzle size is too large. Okay. So it is passed through a series of nozzles, and the glass slides. So here are the glass slides at a very high velocity. Okay, it is pumped inside this cascader at a very high velocity. Because of this velocity, these particles, they travel. Okay, if the particles are larger enough, then they are going to travel through these nozzles. Okay, through this nozzle. If they are large enough, they are going to be retained over here. The smaller size particles are going to travel further. Okay, through this nozzle, they are going to enter inside. Again, the particle which is bigger in these, it is going to get impacted over here. Can you see over here? Here, this is the biggest particle. Here, the particle size has reduced. It got impacted because it entered through here. Okay, now this size particle cannot enter through this nozzle. Okay, so it has to remain over here only. Further, the smaller particles will further travel more. Okay, then still smaller, it will further travel, still smaller, it will further travel, still smaller, it is travel, and finally it is going to get removed. Okay, so larger the particle, it is going to get impacted, okay, on the glass slide at the lower velocity stage. So this is the lowest velocity stage. Okay, right? This is the first stage. Here the particles for near about 7 micron, okay, are getting impacted, are getting removed over here, right? If you go further in the second stage, you get the particles of near about 4.7 microns. You go to the first further stage, near about 3.3 micron particles are getting placed over here. You go further, 2.1 micron size particles. You go further, you get 1.1 micron size particles. So slowly and steadily, and the particle size which are very, very small, that is near about 0.65 micron, they get removed from the system. So when you remove the plates and when you analyze these plates, you can find out how much particles, how many number of particles, okay, are on your are in your stage 1, are retained in your stage 1. How many particles are retained in your stage 2? How many particles are retained in your stage 3, stage 4, stage 5, and stage 6? Now this is similar to your sieve analysis. If you remember, it is similar to the sieve analysis. In sieve analysis, we were keeping the sieves one below the other. Over here, what you are keeping is, you are also keeping the sieves one below the other, and below that, what you are placing is your glass slides, right? And what is happening is, now the particles are getting passed through this also, through the nozzles also, okay, and the further particles, they are traveling further, okay. The same thing was happening in your sieves also. In sieves, what you used to do is, the sieves with the bigger mesh size, okay. So you have the size of the sieve holes, which is bigger, used to keep at the top, whereas if you come down, then the sieve size used to decrease, okay. The smaller hole sieve used to become, you will keep it below. The particles, they pass through it. There you are doing the shaking. In sieves, you are doing the shaking, isn't it? You are giving vibration for the particles to travel. Here what you are doing is, you are applying velocity. Instead of instead of shaking the sieve, instead of giving vibration, okay, what you are doing is, you are giving them the velocity. You are passing them at a very high velocity. So the larger particles get collected at the initial stage, whereas the smaller particles get collected at the larger stage. This is the working of the cascade impactor. From this, you can find out what are the particle size, and how the distribution of particle size has taken place inside an aerosol container. From that, you can find out whether your ingredient is going to reach, your active ingredient is going to reach to the target site which you are intending for. Okay. Now moving ahead, the next method for determining the particle size is light scattering decay method. In light scattering decay method, what you do is, you take a Tyndall beam, okay, and this Tyndall beam, okay, is impacted on the particles, okay, on the aerosol particles, and the intensity of the beam, that is the change intensity. You have some intensity of light which you are inciding on the, which are supplying on the particles, okay. Then at the end, you get some light afterwards. The change in intensity of light tells you the particle size, as well as it is going to give you the number of particles that are present inside this aerosol, okay. This test was carried out, this test is documented in Hatchman, okay. It has been carried out by Porush, Thile, and Young. These are the scientists who carried out this test in order to find out the particle size that is present inside the aerosol, okay. The aerosol that they have used is epinephrine aerosol, okay. What they found out is the change in intensity of a Tyndall beam, okay, when they have passed it to the epinephrine aerosol, okay. They have found out that the average diameter of the particles was in the range of 2.7 to 3.5 microns. They further found out that 70 to 78% of the particles were having size less than 5 microns. 88 to 93% of the particles were having the size less than 7 microns, which means that 18% were having in the size below, in between 5 to 7 microns. So 70% were having size, say, less than 5 microns. 18% were having between 5 to 7, and near about 10% was having the size between 10 microns. Okay, so that is how they have found out the size of the particles using a Tyndall beam by light scattering decay method. Okay, this is the method that they have used for finding out the particle size of your, that is present inside the product concentrate that is present inside the aerosol. Okay, now let us move ahead with the leak test. Right, we have studied one leak test, if you remember, whereby we were when we were doing production, we said that each and every container has to go through the leak test. Okay, whereby we had kept this container on a magnetic conveyor, or we had kept that container in the cage, and after keeping that container on a magnetic conveyor or on the cage, we had passed these containers through water. Okay, which would heat the container before it is removed from that bed. Okay, up to 130 Fahrenheit. Okay, and then we see that whether any leakage is taking place or not. That is the leak test that you carry out. That is the in process leak test that you carry out for each and every container. Now in this case, what you are going to do is, after the containers are filled, etc., you are now going to take near about 12 containers from that whole batch. You are going to select this 10 batch, and these 10 batch, okay, these containers from the batch, these 12 containers from the batch, you are going to weigh it. You are going to carry out the weight. After carrying out the weight, you are going to make this container stand upright, okay, in a standing position at room temperature for near about 3 days. There you are increasing the temperature. Here you are keeping the temperature as constant, and you are going to keep this container for 3 days. Okay, and here you are going to again weight the container, and you are going to find out the loss in weight. What was the weight earlier of the container, of these 12 pressurized containers? What is the weight afterwards, after 3 days, when you are keeping it in a standing position, upright position? What is the weight? And then you are going to find out the weight, difference in weight. Common sense, the difference in weight will reflect how much amount of leakage has taken place from that container. Now let us see how do you define a leakage. A leakage is defined as weight change, your W1 minus W2, the weight which was there earlier, and the weight that has been carried out, the weight after the leakage. So it is defined as the weight change, okay, of the container before and after. So this is before it has been stored for 3 days, and this is after the container is stored for 3 days in a vertical position at 25 degrees plus or minus 2 degrees Celsius, which is the room temperature. Okay, and the number of days are 3 days. So this is how you carry out this test. After carrying out this test, now you find out what is the actual leakage that is taking place. Okay, so leakage rate, it is defined as, the formula is 365, that is the number of days in a year, into 24. It is termed in hours. Okay, the leakage is carried out in hours. Okay, it is determined in hours. Okay, so 24 are the number of hours in a day upon the time for which you have carried out this test. So if you have carried out the test for 3 days, then the hours are near about 36, isn't it? Right? No, sorry, 72. 24 3s are, so the hours are going to be 72. So the number of hours are going to be 72. So this will be 24 divided by 72 into the loss in weight. So you find out the loss in weight, and you put it into this formula, and you find out, and for the time for which this test was carried out, and you find out the leakage rate. Now, what are the limits and standards? You have taken 12 containers, right? Out of these 12 containers, okay, if the average loss leakage rate, average leakage rate, which you have found out from the calculations which are done earlier, right? You have found out the leakage rate. If the leakage rate is less than 3.5%, okay, and one more condition, if none of them, आपने 12 का average निकाला, which is less, you should be less than 3.5%. At the same time, not a single container out of these 12 containers is having leak more than 5%. In that case, your test passes. What happens if there is some variation? Now assume that one of the 12 has the leak more than 5%. We have said that none should have more than 5%. But now one of them is having leak more than 5% per year. Okay, with the leakage test formula that you have found out, right, in the previous slide. And none of the container is having more than 7% of leakage rate. In that case, you are going to repeat with 24 containers. If 2 containers, 3 containers, 4 containers, okay, they have not mentioned, but you have to, it implies that if there are more than one container out of the 12 container which is having leakage more than 5, then the test fails. Or if there is some containers or one container which is having the leak per percentage leakage 8%, 9%, or 10%, then also the test fails. And if it is into this range, that one container is having leak more than 5%, but none is having leak more than 7%, then you are going to repeat it with 24 containers. Now, out of these 36 containers, okay, not more than 2 containers should be outside the range of 7%. Okay, so not more than 2 out of the 36 containers should leak more than 7%. If the leakage of more than 2 containers is above more than 7%, then the test fails. If not, then the test